Hey guys, so I just wanted to go through what comes in the Ez Swap Carriage package and then also how to install everything. What you're looking at here is what comes with the package and then some stuff that we're going to reuse back here. The main thing that you're going to be reusing is just these backlash nuts and coupling and stuff like that. So what comes in the package are these 5 machined aluminum pieces here. You have your main carriage base component. It comes with the linear bearings inside already installed. And then there's these 2 grub screws that will hold them in place. So if they come loose or you want to change them, just take these out or tighten them if they're coming loose. The next part here is going to be the spindle adapter base, I guess is what I'm calling it, or your mount base. And then you have your actual spindle adapters, and then your top and bottom plates, and then some other hardware. You'll also be getting some new linear rods and a new lead screw because they're a little bit longer than the original ones. So yeah, let's go over how to actually install everything. So the first thing you're going to do for the install, if you're running the Prover and you have these limit switches, would be to install the limit switches on the new top and bottom plates here. It's going to be a lot easier to do it now than to try and mess around with it when it's assembled later on. So yeah, let's go ahead and do that. You can skip this if you have the Pro and you don't have limit switches. So first you'll identify your bottom switch for the bottom plate. Grab a screw. And then I have these nuts that you'll need to use as a standoff. And that's to keep these metal little solder blobs here from touching the plates. So just screw it in a little bit past the nut there. And it should just sit above that. And you can experiment some different size washers or something to get this not quite as high up. It'll save you, a few millimeters here and there to get some smaller ones on your travel, but this is just what I'm going to be doing. It's not too much, it's only a few millimeters on the top and bottom. So yeah, you'll have your limit switch there, and it's going to be the same. It's going to be the same procedure for the top plate, except obviously the switch is going to be the one intended for the top. But I'll skip that. Alright, so here's the top with it installed there. So once you got your limit switches installed, the next step you're going to do is leave them out here. You're going to grab these nylon spacers for the stepper motor, and then the screws for that. And we're going to go ahead and put the stepper motor on the top plate here. Alright, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to install the stepper motor on the top plate. And to do this, this would be the top of the top plate. You can recognize it because it has these countersinks for the M5 screws, and then on the bottom side it actually has these M3 countersinks, which we're going to use here in a second. So orientate it like this, flip it over, drop your screws down, and we're going to flip it. With these being forward, that's the front, You can put the connector facing back like this. Grab your nylon spacers or standoffs. And then I think the easiest way to do this is to have the stepper motor flat, and then you'll just line it up like this. Just be sure not to over tighten these. Should just be snug. Yeah, okay, so the next step after this is going to be actually installing this onto the carriage base. Alright, so we've got our top plate and our carriage base, and the way to orientate this, if you see this pocket here, that's going to be to the right, and then this nut is going to be to the left. And the grub screws here, like so you don't flip it this way, the grub screws are going to be on the front side as well. So, to this, you'll grab two of these, drop them in the countersinks. And then we're not going to tighten everything all the way down, but we're going to get it real close. Alright, move on to the next step. Alright, so the next thing we're going to do is install the lead screw into the spindle base. You're going to be using this coupling here, so you'll go ahead and take this off of your lead screw that came with your 3018. Grab the longer lead screw and then just install this on there. The next thing I wanted to note, you're going to be using this stock lead screw, or sorry, anti-backlash nut. I noticed with this nut, the fit it's not real snug, and I know that it's not supposed to be super snug because it needs to travel, but I noticed with this there's a considerable amount of play between the threads, and I don't really know how to solve that. But one thing I am going to include are these stiffer springs. They're a little bit larger, and I'm hoping that this will help eliminate some of that play. The other option you could do is you could look around for some better ones that they don't have all this wiggle in them. But for right now, just use the spring I'm going to be including. So you'll go ahead and back this off until the lead screw is just at the end of the nut there. Put the spring on, and then push this down in here, kind of hard. You'll have to feel for lining up the threads. It has to line up with this bottom one here. But once you get it lined up, you'll go ahead and put it through like that. and that's going to prep us for our next step. Okay, our next step is going to be putting in the linear rods into the top plate here. So if you want to just flip this over, take your rod, set it down. There's a grub screw in here too. Make sure the grub screw's not in the way. Alright, so then you have those in there. Move this camera up. And then you've got your spindle base. We're going to make sure that that's orientated correctly. This is upside down, but you're going to guide the air. This would be better to see. You need to line up the rods with the bearings in here, like that. And then also you're going to be lining up the lead screw with the coupling, or sorry, not the coupling with the stepper motor here. So once you got that on, one thing I like to do is make sure that the grub screw is going to be actually grabbing the flat part on the stepper motor. So I usually put that forward so I can see it, and then I line up the grub screw with that. We're not gonna tighten this down yet because we need to line up the bottom. So that's going to be the next step. So the next step is going to be lining up the bottom plate with the lead screw and these two rods here. The easiest way to do it is line up the lead screw with the bearing in the bottom. I'm going to grab two screws, put them on top. And this is going to be left loose because we have to line up the rods. So you have to line up the rods with these. Oh, they wanted to just go down there on their own. With these little sinks down here. And those are to hold it in place. Trying to find the best way to do this with the lighting. So the right side went in, the left side needs some persuasion. So one way you can do this is to grab a punch or something similar to smack the top of the rod. This is not a punch, but serves its purpose. So once you got those lined up, you can tighten this bottom plate down. And then we're going to actually tighten the grub screws on the linear rods on the top to make sure that it doesn't move anywhere. Yeah, so we have to make sure that these rods are actually all the way down seated before we tighten the grub screws on the sides. So let me grab a hammer. And then ideally you would use a punch, some type of punch, but I'm just going to use this hex screwdriver and a small hammer. And you're just, sorry my hand's in the way, you're just tapping the top of the rods there to make sure they're seated all the way down. Once you're confident that those rods are all the way down, we're going to tighten the grub screws in the sides. And the grub screws are already in there. I'm going to leave them in the sides. There's one on this side, and then obviously one on the other side. So you would just maybe back those off and put on some Loctite because you really don't want these to go anywhere. But then once you got it, once you got the Loctite on, just go ahead and tighten this. Alright, we're going to go on to the next step. Alright, so the next step is going to be putting on your actual spindle adapter. You can either put the spindle in there first or laser in there first and then install it, but I think it'd be easier to install this and then your spindle so you can adjust where your spindle height needs to be and all that once you got it on the actual machine. So, and one thing that I forgot to mention in the previous step we're going to do right now is to just seat the lead screw all the way down. Make sure that it's actually down seated down in the bottom here where that bearing is. And then of course I'm going to tighten it up. Okay, so for the spindle adapter, you're going to grab these screws, and these ones have a different head on them. These ones have use a little bit larger hex, so that when you're torquing it down, they won't strip out like these other ones used up here have more likelihood of stripping out than these style. So I changed it for these, since you're going to be changing these spindle adapters out more frequently, a little bit different screw head there. So yeah, you just put those in and then sit it down on the base. And then the easiest way is actually do this at the very top. Then let me actually move the camera. It's easiest at the top because you can clear the motor when you're screwing it in with an Allen wrench. Yep, just once you get that on, back it off again. Alright, so once you've got that done, you're pretty much done with the carriage install, other than putting it on your machine. But I'm just going to show you, it's self-explanatory, but I'm going to show you how to install the spindle as well. If you didn't know this, let me read that. It says forward right there for the front. This is mainly just for, I think they wanted folks to be able to look at the pictures and know which connector goes where, but yeah, you can still use that for forward here if you would like. So drop that down into the spindle adapter, and then once you get it in the machine, you would actually lower this to wherever you wanted to put it. I'm going to put it about right there. And then with the nose resting on the bed, to make sure that it's straight in there. Tighten the screw. Once you get it snug, then you can tighten it up. I don't have a machine bracing this, so I'm going to hold on to it. That's it there. You're pretty much ready to go. So that's it. That's the install for the carriage, assembling the carriage, other than putting it on the machine, which would be the same way as the stock. One thing to note, I was looking at the limit switches. It seems that the limit switch on the actual machine, if you run the Prover, it hits this carriage fine on the left side. The right side, I don't know what the stock standoff length was for that. So you might have to get longer ones for the right side, but I'm not sure. I was looking at it and it looked like it would depress that switch fine, but that might be something I need to look into in the future as well. That's it. Let me know if you guys have any questions or anything like that in the comments. Thanks.